started. So today we've got Foster Davis, cybersecurity guru, lots of experience. You would have seen his bio when you signed up for registration, so we won't go into that, but quite simply, you've got a lot of experience in hacking and cybersecurity, especially with the U.S. Navy. So, and you were with us, for those who were not with us last year, Foster was with us January of 12th, I think, last year. And you gave us some great advice about cybersecurity, what was kind of going on, what the hackers were after, and how to deal with like a ransomware attack. So if anybody has not seen that video, it is on our website, so go ahead and check it out. I did send the link out with the registration. So Foster, you've already given some slides for us.
Sure.
Why don't you just go ahead and kick off, well, sorry, a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, this is not legal advice. We're not lawyers. We should take about an hour in this. We have so many people now joining the webinar. We are not going to be able to take questions during live broadcast. What we will, though, do is go ahead and encourage you to post your questions, and we will respond. I'll work with Foster after the event, and we'll respond post-broadcast in some kind of like email blast or an article or something like that. So please go ahead and post those questions or comments that you have or your experiences. For those who are here for certificates, those will be auto-generated only to live attendees, so you should get those in about an hour after the event ends. And I added the handout from last year, that cybersecurity terminology cheat sheet, which I found useful. It's the same one from last year, but maybe we can add to it later as well. And let me see, disclaimers, same as last year. You can never be 100% safe, correct?
That's right.
That will always be the case. There's so many different factors that affect your cybersecurity that there's really, all you can do is just kind of manage your risk. And of course, again, it's never zero. And that's what Foster is here to explain to us. So Foster, tell those who have not joined us in the past a little bit about your background.
Sure. So as you alluded, I've spent about 15 years in the federal service, mostly in the U.S. Navy, but also working missions at the National Security Agency and the Pentagon. About half of my career was out in what we would call the business side of the military.
Okay.
So counter-piracy, operations on the high seas, humanitarian operations. The latter half of my career working with both national intelligence infrastructure, but also our elite hackers and helping them. What we do is we take our elite hackers and try to hack ourselves so that we can find out issues before the bad guys do.
Okay.
I'm a certified chief information security officer and co-founder of BreachBits.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'm just going to go ahead. These are your slides. I did actually was kind of going through them, and I was talking to Wes, and I asked him, I said, what does PTAAS mean? It's
right.
Penetration Testing as a Service.
That's right.
That's a new, we've never heard of it before.
It's a bit of a new term.
Have you coined it?
No,
Okay.
certainly not. But we like it, and we think it approximates some of the things that we do.
Okay.
In one reason, I wanted to give a little bit about what BreachBits does, because there are a lot of opinions in the security space and the compliance space, for that matter. And so it's important for people to understand just from where I will give the opinions I present today, or the things that we're seeing, comes from my experience in BreachBits. And what we do every day is, one way to say it is that we do deliver automated AI-powered penetration testing as a service.
Okay.
So typically penetration testing and red teaming, so taking hackers and trying to break in, historically has been a very expensive endeavor. We have innovated on that, and we can do it at scale across hundreds of thousands of companies in an easy to use way. So that's a big thing of what we do. But also I put up there cyber risk translation. So whether you're in compliance, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an enterprise, whether you are a seasoned technical leader, cyber is extremely complicated. And so we humans need to be able to understand that information. And so a lot of what we really do is take this incredible baseline of technology, but how do we help people actually understand it? For example, On the screen there are two of our main tools, what we call the breach risk score, which is becoming a standard for what the hackers believe the risk of being able to break into a company to be, a 0 to 10 scale. Doesn't get much more simple than that. And then on the right, and you'll see me mention a little bit of this, is the art of risk management. And that enables any person within 15 minutes or 30 seconds, they can actually start to understand where cyber risk lies, either in their company or those they're looking at.
With the greatest impact. So
Oh,
for those,
exactly.
anybody who's
Right.
just listening in, because we do have a few people who just listen
Okay,
in.
right.
It is a kind of a, what do you call that, graph,
Mhm.
Impact and the likelihood. And so anything in the red with high impact, high likelihood, that's where you're going to be focused on.
That's right.
Those are your highest things.
Right, it's easy. Follow the red dots.
Yeah, follow the red dots. I can do that. Okay, before we move on, I do want to quickly ask a poll of our audience, and I just want to find out who our audience, to learn a little bit about them. So let me just find that. And I'm asking you to tell us about yourself. What, especially if you're in insurance, that's what we kind of wanted to find out how, because I was finding it hard to get insurance, cybersecurity insurance.
Right.
Let me see. So please go ahead and respond to that poll. Is that showing? Usually people start. I've already got it hit. Hold on. I'm gonna try that again. No, it's closed. All right, something's happened where the poll is closed. So I do apologize. It won't let me relaunch it. I don't know why that is the case. But I was wanting to find out if, because I did notice we had a lot of people from the insurance industry sign up. So I wanted to find out, are they signing up to try and find ways to reduce their risk when offering cybersecurity policies? And I know we have risk management and compliance people here as well. And also, of course, IT support as well. So apologize, I couldn't get you guys to do that. This is what happens when Tom's away.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't know what happened there. Now, and as far as the cost is concerned, I can remember looking at trying to, it was I think they called them white hat hackers.
Sure.
And they would, you know, contracted with them, and then they would basically try and break in.
Right.
And I think it was 2015, 2016. So not that long ago that I was looking at hiring that service, and they wanted, it was like $30,000 to $50,000.
That's right.
And they were only going to do it for a short period.
That's right.
And that was, I was just going, okay, this is, you know, crazy. Right. And now we've got you guys for,
you know,
way less.
Right. And you know, the Fortune 500 is spending, some of them are spending upwards of $1 million a year, and that's only to do 4 assessments. And so it's just our model. We've made some trades. Some organizations, you have to have the very high cost elements, but for most people, you can get about 80% with what we do, and that is more than enough.
Yeah.
And we do it continuously, so that's really important.
And I also like, because again, I'm not a tech person, and yet I get these emails from you that shows our breach risk score. I've been watching it come down.
Yeah.
We dropped.
Yeah, you guys have been doing some good work.
Yeah. Well, that's all Wes, really. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic that I can understand it, not being a technical person, but wanting to be assured that we're heading in the right direction. And I think it was even last year, right before Christmas in 2021, that Log4j risk vulnerability kind of popped up on everybody's radars, and Wes was even away or he was sick or something, and I was able to manage that with the developers, just because you kind of alerted it to us and said, this is a bright red spot. Go find out if you've got this vulnerability, and our developers were able to do that. So I was very excited about that.
Well, yeah, you delivered the leadership. I mean, that's the most secure organizations have leaders that.
But as a leader, you can't if you don't understand it. And that's what I liked about your
right.
system, is you helped me understand.
I'm glad to hear that.
To do. So.
I'm glad to hear that, and you know, kind of gets to this graphic that I like to show. You know, okay, where is BreachBits in the market? There are a lot of really good, reputable vendors that provide similar things to what we do in some way, but none quite like the way that we do. And for some people, those are great, and I highly recommend the other people who help you illuminate risk.
Right.
What you want is somebody that helps make it work for you and your organization.
Okay.
Where we find a particular good fit in the marketplace, you can see on this model here, we sort of have breach bits in the middle there, and three edges of this triangle. On the top, individual businesses, sort of like perhaps your business or others out there. What we do is we help them deliver the cyber risk intelligence or the business intelligence. You, as a decision maker in your company, you have multiple streams of intelligence helping you make decisions. We are one of those for many individual businesses. In the bottom right, we have cyber insurance, and this is something that is really picking up steam here. The idea is that cyber insurance underwriters are having a challenge where if you were trying to get flood insurance for your home, the first thing they're going to figure out is the home in the floodplain.
Right.
If you were trying to get auto insurance, they're going to look at your driving history. There has not been historically a very good way for the underwriters to understand risk. And that's why many businesses in the marketplace are experiencing premiums that have doubled, limits that have gone way down, and things have been excluded from their policies. And so essentially it's too expensive and they don't even get to manage their risk.
Right.
So what we do for the insurance companies, they need to know this cyber intelligence as well. So we help them. And then what they might do is require of their policyholders to run our services. That also, just let's take your company, for example, with a very good low risk score, allows you to then hold your ground and negotiate to make sure that you get the policy that works for your company.
Right. Okay.
And then on the left side, we also work with managed service providers, which for many companies, this is how they're actually getting their IT. Their computers, their software, their email systems are usually, in many cases, provided by these expert delivery service providers.
Including like the cloud hosting service providers?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
In a way, yes. It depends on the model, but imagine that you just, instead of having an in-sourced IT department, maybe you have one or two experts in-house, but you really work an ongoing contract with a company. They're always going to make sure that that everything always works.
Right.
The computers are there, it's up to date, and they do incredible service for companies that, like probably 90% of companies now, must have robust IT.
Okay.
So we help them as well deliver insight. They also have a responsibility, it turns out, to keep their clients secure. So we can help them. And in each area here, you can see that there is alignment of incentives where everybody is incentivized to know the true risk and to be doing something about it, and everybody ends up winning in this type of a paradigm.
Okay. So cyber kind of security, because again, a few years ago, it seems to me it was really just paper policies. Everybody have a strong password, 12 digits, change your password every 30 days. Maybe a company got pen tested for a couple of weeks, or some testing of phishing emails sent out to their staff just to kind of see where their weakest link were, that's something that you guys do, which I thought was quite interesting as well when we saw that come through. And then, but now it seems to be a lot more than just, well, let's just paper some policies, write some policies, and then that's our cybersecurity policy. And we're good. We'll provide that to our insurance companies, and we'll train our staff on how to spot a phishing email. And that's it. It's way more complicated these days, or not even more complicated, just more intensive.
And I agree with both those statements, right? It is in some ways much more complicated. And I would say that part of that, you actually hit on this, I think, earlier, in that it really is just about risk management, and whether that's your compliance risk, anywhere from your cash flow, payroll, sales and marketing risk, things that come in there, tax risk. There's all these risks out there. Cyber, if you think of cyber as just one other type of risk, and that way we can simplify it so we can get our head around it. But that means, and the reason that there are 3 points on this triangle in this case, is that it turns out that the individual business, when they purchase cyber insurance, of course, they are transferring risk to the underwriter. But then when they also engage with a managed service provider, they are transferring some of that risk. And it is right and proper that when risk is transferred, We just need to do a few more things to be a little bit more robust
Okay,
and not just trust that the paper's working.
okay. Fantastic.
But that's kind of where we fit into the ecosystem. And, you know, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to help you or help your viewers understand that this is just sort of how we think. This is our philosophy. Notice that there's nothing really technical at all on this page. For us, it's all about risk. And what we help people do, whether it's the insurance company, the individual business, or the managed service provider, help me quantify and compare the risk.
Right.
None of us ever have enough time or money to solve all the problems right now.
Tell me about it.
So we just,
So, and on this slide for our audio listeners, it's basically, again, that risk chart where you have the impact versus likelihood. You've got risk, the possibility of something bad happening, likelihood, how often will the bad thing happen, and impact. If it does happen, how bad will it be? And of course, and that's how we're just kind of rating.
Yeah.
And this is very typical just in the general risk management, whether it's AML risk, things like that. So it's a very kind of common theme that we see.
and a major takeaway I'd say is that to everybody listening, you can do this. Cyber risk is not that complicated, especially if you can think about it in this way. I literally teach this to K through 12 students. And then after about 5 minutes, you can look at a chart. And for those listening, just imagine a chart where there's an up, there's a down, and you put all the bad things that could happen. Just go find the things that are red, that are bad, and go solve those first. Anybody can do this.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, I mean, you say you work with kindergartners?
Sure.
Is that, what kind of examples do they come up with as bad risk?
Right. I mean, I love, and because they don't have, inherently, they have never even had an opportunity to gain technical understanding.
Right.
I think for some adults, we feel like, oh, well, I should have gone and done that research. I should have spent more time doing that. For them, they're uninhibited by that, and they're unburdened by that as well. They can just say, well, look, Mr. Foster, I'm going to go, if I've got $10,000 in 2 weeks, they don't know how much money that is, but they know it's a limited amount. Let's go solve the red and orange dots.
Oh, okay. So you help them with budgeting and managing the risk.
I help them understand that you can't solve everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually use candy. You can't eat all the candy at once. Which one are you going to eat first?
Yeah. Okay.
So.
All right. That's a good example. Fantastic. All right. So ransomware, obviously biggest threat. This slide.
Right. And I think what I wanted to, that was a lot of setup to help you understand my perspective. But what I wanted to do is let you know, okay, it's been a year since we've spoken.
Right.
We see so many companies all over the world, and we therefore can see certain trends from where we sit. So if you imagine that we are hacking or, ethically hacking, and we are helping people understand their risk, here are some things that we have seen. In the first part, I want to say, here's what we see trends for cyber attackers specifically.
Okay.
So for the people who are trying to get out there and hurt other people, ransomware, many people have heard it. It's where they can take over your computers and they say, you don't get it back unless you pay me. The idea of ransom is an age-old art, and this is just the modern form. But the fact is, it still remains, it's so easy for hackers to do. They get so much money from it.
I saw that with Pipeline.
Yes.
Ransom paid, yeah.
Right, and they have no recourse. It is very good. It's lucrative for the attackers. They are still going to do it. The two items below that I've listed are phishing and bad passwords. Because, okay, how are they getting in to conduct the ransom? To many of us, it's a mystery, but if you're thinking about this right and you have somebody helping you, the two dots that we see sort of on the charts that the kindergartners can understand is there's two ways that we can almost always get into these companies. Number one is phishing. You will always have somebody in your company, no matter how much training you do. It is very easy to trick a person, and there's not much that will ever change about that. And when it's done well, and when there are not certain security controls in place, phishing is so easy to get a hold of a computer or a computer system. And so, being on guard with email. If you were to place some dollars in your organization to improve, are you doing things to prevent that part from happening. And I'll talk a little bit later about how to
Okay.
solve that one.
Okay.
Bad passwords, that's another one. Probably for me, the most annoying thing ever is having to change my passwords, forget my passwords, all of this, okay? And I will talk about how to solve some of that, but the fact is that a bad password is an easy way in, whether that's on your VPN, whether that's on your individual computer or your email. Oftentimes, I don't have to have some fancy way of attacking. I'll just take the top 1,000 passwords that people are using, and I will try them on your account using automation. Attackers are doing this already.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, and maybe I don't find it on yours, but chances are if I check 100 100 people,
Right.
I'm going to catch about 5 people with a bad password.
Oh, really?
It's just how it is.
Okay.
So,
How can you
yeah.
stop? Like, I don't know what my team, I don't know what
Mhm.
passwords they're using.
Mhm.
So how can I be assured, or is that something later on in the slide?
Well, I mean, you know, we can talk about it now. I think that the good news, and you'll hear me say this, and it bears repeating, is that the good news for people trying to manage the risk is the cost over the last 5 to 7 years to solve a lot of these challenges has come way down.
Yeah.
And that's really good. There are systems that will basically manage a lot of this for you, but as a leader, you need to make sure that those are in place, that there is a periodic review of those, and then how do you know if it's actually working? Is, and that's obviously what we provide for you, is we are trying to break in with passwords against
Right.
all the time. And you all are so far, so good kind of thing.
Right. We do use a, what's it called, a password management tool.
Okay.
Wes had us switch over to that. Hands up, I had my little black book
Mhm.
written down,
Right.
because I have so many passwords. And
Right.
I was trying to make them very, very secure, but you just can't remember them all. And so Wes switches over to this password management tool. I didn't like it at first.
Mhm.
It's frustrating. Now I can't live without it.
Right.
I only have to remember my one password, and then it just generates very strong 16, 24 digit passwords, lots of
Mhm.
different codes. And we do go through, because it does score each user, all of our staff.
Okay.
And hands up, I'm the lowest, only because I do have just so many, things. But it's a
But look,
fantastic tool.
you're able to quantify.
Yeah.
Look, you've turned the light on. You have some
Yeah.
visibility on that. If I could give 3 top points of advice on passwords, is for a lot of people, a password manager is going to be the right idea as long as you trust your password manager. If it's reputable, um, as long as you can trust them, then the advantage there is that with these randomly generated passwords, those are difficult for humans to remember, which means it's going to be difficult for a hacker to use.
Okay.
And so that it can be a very good method. The number one, honestly, thing though is multi-factor authentication. That means
That's beyond two-factor authentication.
no, it's just a
Or
more
does that
general way
include?
to put it.
Okay,
Multi could mean 2, 3.
Okay.
It could mean you have something. Authentication is where the system is trying to make sure that you are who you say you are. That's what authentication means. So it's going to check for 3 types of things, up to 3 types of things. Something you know, which is traditionally your password. Something you have. Some companies have an ID card
Or a token.
or a
type thing.
token,
Yeah.
or something that you are. For example, of the National Security Agency, sometimes they would even weigh you day after day to see
Oh.
that you're the same person.
No.
Or fingerprints, biometrics, your
Yeah.
face, retina. Those are, even the cost of those are very low, but that's
Okay.
something you are.
Okay.
And without going too much into the academics of that, multi-factor authentication, and you see insurance companies, if you've ever applied, if you do not have MFA implemented, you might just not apply yet and get that implemented, because it's basically a red line, and
They'll just turn you down automatically if you don't.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the underwriters,
Okay.
but I would, if I was an underwriter, I would not write a policy where MFA was not on essential systems, because it is just so effective at thwarting guys like me who are trying to break in.
Okay. All right. And before we move on to the last one, which is the new attack groups, I had mentioned to you before, I've noticed this, what we call email hijacking.
Yes.
And So how are they getting it? Are they getting into somebody's system and then just hijacking that? Because it's an email thread that has been written, and then they're bouncing, and then they're emailing me back with an attachment. And of course, I'm pretty good at being able to tell. It's like, wait a second, that doesn't sound like that person.
Okay.
And I'll give them a phone call.
That's good.
And I haven't had to do that. I've had to reach out to people on LinkedIn.
Right.
I had to reach out to, like, literally just call the office. And I can remember one time I say, hey, I just got an email from so-and-so. It doesn't sound right. I think it could be phishing. And they were immediately going, you're the third person to call us. And to me, I think there's a lot more awareness going on, which I think is great.
I mean, that's great. Clearly something has educated you. You self-describe
Right.
as a non-technical person, but something in what you've been exposed to is helping you understand.
For you.
Well,
and Wes,
right.
Yeah.
And consuming whatever you're consuming, that must be working, because you did basically the textbook perfect answer.
Okay.
Because hackers fail when we defenders work together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They fail because they are hoping to get somebody alone, making a decision on their own, and fooling them.
Yeah.
That's how these bad things happen. Now, how do you get a takeover of an account? Hackers ask themselves this every day. How do I do this? Now, it's an evolving case, and it depends. For some email systems, let's say if you log into your Hotmail, and I'm just picking one. I'm not assessing Hotmail specifically, but I'm saying something more casual, and maybe not something protected by business grade security controls.
Right.
Okay. If all you do when you log into your email is type a password, well, a hacker they know how to find these weaker email accounts. Honestly, that's probably one of the big ways you're going to be able to achieve that. Phishing could lead to some of that, but from where I sit, the passwords are usually the most appealing. And what we have to remember is hackers are just like you and me. They've got kids, probably. They're trying to get their coffee in the morning. They're probably paying their taxes
just
too.
Day job.
Yeah, it's just so like most of us, we're looking for the most efficient way.
Right.
So when they're trying to figure out how to take over an email account, because they know when they do that, they get to exploit the trust, just like you had to do a triple take to figure out if that was. They're going to look for the easiest way. They don't care about necessarily finding you, but they might try 1,000 people, and if 10 of them work, they're in business.
Okay. All right. And this new attack groups, ransomware startups?
Right. I put a sort of a fourth bullet on here. What I'm just saying is, from what we can see, business is good for attackers. And if you've ever looked at an industry and you see a lot of new businesses starting or new houses being built in a neighborhood, wow, business is booming. And so I'm just pointing out, we also are seeing some of that.
Okay.
Business continues to be good. Ransomware continues to be the favorite playbook that they're going to run.
Okay. All right. I'd say fantastic, but that's probably not really the right response to that. But
well, it's fantastic that we know that.
Exactly. So it's not just the big, like the dark side, these bigger kind of groups that are more well known. You're saying it is it's startups. The 1 and 2 man bands are also now.
And there's maybe two kinds of startups. You got a startup that's completely new,
right.
Or if you are a mature company and you want to experiment with a new way, you splinter off a splinter startup. I mean, what was it? The Saturn company? I think somebody told me one time, if you remember the cars made by Saturn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I may have gotten that detail wrong, but I thought that they were actually a spinoff of a U.S. domestic car company.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. All right. So the energy sector, I saw that report that came out last year.
And one of the things I just wanted to highlight here is, here's an example of when you can understand attackers and when you can talk about risk in this way. This is, for example, one of the things that we will look at. And so when we look at the entire energy sector,
this is just the U.S. energy sector.
That's right. Select index of the U.S. energy sector. A lot of people have an interest in that industry. This is the type of thing that.
When you say a lot of people, you mean the hackers? They're interested.
Everybody.
Okay.
Attackers, nation states, obviously energy. All of life. We could make a philosophical discussion, maybe over a different coffee. It all sort of comes down to energy.
Wine, maybe.
That's right. Yeah, something stronger, because everything depends on energy, and I just mean that basically everybody in the world cares about energy, and therefore we care about the security.
The security of that infrastructure. Okay.
But as we look at either a group, we want to get an understanding of what does the security landscape look like. This is just a sort of an illustration of, I've been saying a lot of words, but like here is what hackers might look at if they were looking at energy.
Okay.
In the picture here, we have most of the group is actually, we're saying is medium risk. They're in the yellow.
Okay.
About a third of them are in the green. That means a hacker can't even
You got some
find a
really
way
low
in.
greens.
Some are very low green.
That's good.
That means that a hacker, maybe thinks that after over 5 years they wouldn't even be able to get in, for example.
So they won't even go for that.
Right. The hackers are going to not go for the greens. They might go for the yellows, but what do we have here in the top right? We've got some orange that we saw in the energy sector.
Right.
And you better believe that when attackers see something that they consider to be of orange, almost red risk, that is where their attention is going to be.
Because it's easier to.
Because they've got a day job, they're trying to go home to their kids.
Exactly.
They're trying to get their,
Okay.
their burger.
And what are those vulnerabilities that the orange players, those, is it the bad passwords, lack of training
So when we look at it, we don't look for a single thing, because for an attacker, they sort of have to build a bridge, or what we call the sort of attack chain, or the kill chain. I have to get 10 things to magically align and work in order to get the hack. Now, I'm used to doing that as an attacker because I do it all the time, and I know the telltale signs of where I see that bridge crossing over where I'll have an aligned kill chain. There are other frameworks such as the MITRE attack framework that
MITRE,
MITRE. It's a company that works a lot with the U.S. government and the Department of Defense.
Okay.
But the idea is to if we can framework out how attackers think, if we understand our enemy, we can better defend against the enemy. If I know the enemy has to create a bridge across a river, I can take out some of the columns or the span of that bridge, therefore they cannot cross.
Right.
This is how attackers think all the time. Can I make a bridge in there? Can I make an attack chain in there? So when you see the orange dots, for us, that means we have a high likelihood, high predictability that there is a chain in there. In fact, every dot on that chart means we see a bridge in.
Oh, okay.
The question is, how hard is it to make that bridge happen? And if I get that bridge over, on the impact side, we're seeing, has that bridge taken me to a landfill, which is not valuable, or has it taken me inside the bank?
Okay. All right, interesting. Now this report was just on the energy sector. Are there any other sectors? And also, my second question is, if this is the U.S. energy sector, is the same thing happen for UK, EU? I mean, are you seeing the same thing, or have you done those studies?
So we have, of course, anecdotal experience with all of these other industries. This particular study, you want to be scientific about these, and so there's sample size and statistical considerations for there. So while I can speak with authority on the energy sector in the U.S., I don't want to just give anecdotes about what we see elsewhere, but we do have an ongoing study of all 50 states in the United States. And we are certainly, we sort of pick and choose the most appropriate industries to look at any given time. We are actually currently right now in a discussion about what is the next thing that people need to know about.
What about healthcare?
Healthcare is, anecdotally, healthcare is a big target.
Yeah, I've kind of I was talking to some people yesterday, and they're saying that because the hospitals now, they're basically losing money because they're having to pay so much for nursing staff after the pandemic. And so I can imagine if I was running a hospital, obviously we were so focused on serving patients and getting nurses and all of our equipment to do the pandemic. I'm sure that the cyber security budget is much lower than it should be.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Let's think about it from the hacker's perspective. Most hackers, okay, the ones that are trying to get a ransom, they don't really care who they're hacking. That's a common misconception, by the way. Many, let's say, small enterprise companies or large small businesses, they believe, oh, well, a hacker would never come after me. So that we need to break that. That's not how hackers think. They just want to get the ransom. So what they're thinking is, where can I build a bridge into a company that if I take that company, if I take their IT or their operational technology hostage, they will pay me a lot of money to release it. So think like manufacturing and distribution companies. If I can hijack their assembly line and stop the assembly line, they're losing over $1 million a day. They will pay me a $5 million ransom in a heartbeat.
Okay, so this slide, you have U.S. Department of Defense cybersecurity maturity model and SOC 2 penetration test recommended. So what are you seeing?
Right. So just a quick note about where we see compliance. We see a certain perspective of compliance, and I just wanted to have two notes that the Department of Defense in the U.S. has what they call the cybersecurity maturity model. Think about it like the DoD saw that there's compliance requirements, like some industries have payment card industry, PCI DSS, SOC 2, ISO 27001. There are these compliance models. The DoD said we should probably have one too. And so it's their flavor of it. I continue to watch this one, but for the last 18 months, it's been in a bit of a, people would say, oh, it kind of almost had a false start, but we see that picking up again. So it's just a note that we see more energy. The DoD continues to say, no, this will happen. And so I see that picking up. So some of our clients, for example, are saying, hey, now's the time. Last year we thought it was, no, it wasn't. Now it's the time. So just some insight from me personally on that. SOC 2, additionally, those that have to do Sarbanes-Oxley in whatever region you're in, some flavors of SOC require things. For SOC 2, a penetration test is still recommended, at least for some of the parts that I've seen. There may be some parts where it is required, but it's highly recommended just as an easy way to answer a few of the diligence parts of that compliance standard. So we continue to see those two as being popular today. Could it become
the point where penetration testing is required? Do you see SOC 2 requiring that in the future?
I don't want to speak for the SOC 2 body. However, if we think about compliance, compliance is really good at codifying what we learned over the last 5 to 10 years, but it's 5 years out of date, right? If you do compliance, congratulations, you have met the standard from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like what I mean is not what security professionals would say is a good thing to do. You've met that as of what we would have said 5 years ago. And so typically you'll continue to see as prices go down, as, for example, your password manager, the price and the reliability of that system and multi-factor authentication has come so far down. That's why you see a lot of people now saying, okay, now those things are required.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know, of course, we had also looked at the SOC 2 a few years ago, and again, it was going to be just almost a $30,000 a year, require, in a year to get that SOC 2 certification. It was like, wow, we can't, we're still small business ourselves at the time. So that was going to be very, very costly. All right, thanks for that. Okay, so where you can see from where you sit, cyber insurance.
Well, insurance just generally always an interesting place to watch, because sometimes in some industries you'll see insurance move and change a standard before you'll see compliance, and you'll see compliance move before you see regulation. In some ways, it might depend, but in a rough approximation, if you watch insurance, whether it's auto insurance, property insurance, and in this case, of course, cyber insurance, these organizations have accepted the risk. That means they are working very, very hard to understand the risk and what is the risk and how much is that risk actually valued in dollars. So insurance is, I think, one of the keystones to cracking the cybersecurity challenge that our world faces, that cyber defenders face. Keep a close eye on cyber insurance. When they are doubling premiums and lowering your limits and excluding ransomware, which we have here on the slide.
I saw that. I was like, whoa, that's almost like, well, then what's the purpose of the cybersecurity insurance?
And people should definitely ask themselves that question. But on the first hand, what you should read from that signal is they view those things as being very dangerous.
Okay.
And therefore, you should believe that those things are very dangerous and pay particular attention. If your insurance application or your underwriter or your broker says, hey, look, you have to have multi-factor authentication or you're not insurable, then you should take that very seriously as, okay, well, it's almost a case closed idea that we should have that.
Right.
Because that means that they are losing money when those things are not in place.
Okay.
And so when we see that people are experiencing increased premiums and reduced limits and these exclusions, we're also seeing that sometimes a company, they may need $5 million in cyber liability insurance, perhaps because a SOC requires them to. However, they go to the marketplace, they try to purchase 5 million, and some are having some real problems actually finding it.
We've heard about that in our CEO group. Yeah.
Sure. And so that can be very difficult. The last part here,
which is defending against false positives. And I was going to ask you about that. What does that mean?
Well, let's make sure we all buy insurance, and we want to make sure, insurance is a real close partner for everybody's business.
Right.
And if so you got to make sure you have empathy for what the insurance companies are going through. One of the things that they are going through that's difficult, let's say that you were applying for insurance. Some insurance companies are using tools that on the surface may look similar to what we do. However, the challenge is that they get their red dots, and a lot of times those are false positives. So I scanned your company, not me, but the insurance company uses their vendor to scan your company. It says, hey, I'm sorry, we have 5 red dots. You then go spend time to go look for those, but find out they were false positives. They weren't really there.
Okay.
Somebody did not look to see if the bridge was completely there.
Okay.
They just saw the first part of the bridge. They said, oh, therefore a bridge must be there. And the problem is that when the quantification and detection tools that they're using, nobody likes a false positive.
Right.
You start to ignore it. You get frustrated.
You spend a lot of time and money.
Spend a lot of time.
Yeah. Or your premiums go up, or you can't get one.
So now imagine you're a cyber insurance company.
Right.
You know that if you don't find the risk, that company's going to get hacked and you're going to lose a lot of money. Now put on top of that as that insurance company or underwriter, you don't even have a good reading on where the risk is. So we see how this is a big challenge. Okay. And this is why we're in the middle of that triangle, because this is something we seek to solve each of these areas in there.
Okay.
Because the more you can understand the truth of where the risk is, everybody wins.
Okay. So you think like with this, what you do, the continuous pen testing, providing that to your client, like we're a client,
yes,
so you provide that to us, and then we can then use as our kind of risk scores keep going down and down and down, and we can prove after 9 months, 10 months, 11 or a year, hey, insurance company, we want to lower premium because now we can prove that we've been.
You can defend that.
Yeah.
Some insurance companies are even exploring with having categories based on if you get into the green, you qualify for the most competitive policy.
Okay.
Also think about it this way. Let's say that you're applying for insurance. You use our services. What we want to provide for you, when that insurance company says, hey, you have 5 big things you have to fix, you get to say, I don't have them, and I have the proof. BreachBits has already shown me that those things were false positives. So next question.
Okay. All right. And are you finding that, well, I guess the next question is, how long does a business have to be monitored or pen tested before the insurance companies will kind of take that information into consideration? I mean, is it a year? Is it 2 months?
No, well, first of all, that's in the eye of the underwriter.
Okay.
And you're going to see, as you see in any market, there are some underwriters more comfortable with taking certain risks. Maybe they can quantify or understand your risk in different ways. Maybe certain industries they know are less. So that's going to, in some ways, that could depend on a case by case. However, what we're working to do is to make that as predictable for the policyholder as it can by saying, if you're in this bin, the underwriter has said that, therefore, if you've been monitored for this long and it's green, then you're good.
Okay.
So that's something we're exploring right now.
Okay. And I guess for the audience members who are probably just like staff members, support staff, compliance, staff members kind of listening in who aren't making these decisions about insurance, aren't IT. I think what I want to kind of really impress upon those in our audience is that it's this kind of stuff that management's having to deal with. It's a reason why they are harassing you to say change your password,
That's right.
use a very strong password, manage your passwords well. Listen to those cybersecurity training webinars that they ask you to take every year or however often, because those are important. Pay attention to those emails that are coming in. Don't just kind of, oh, it's not my job, because it's IT and it's not my job. It's
Right.
everybody's job,
Right.
to make sure we're protecting the business. Otherwise, these ransomwares can shut a business down. And they're just
Yes.
millions of dollars.
It's horrible. It devastates organizations of all types. And this slide and what we're talking about now is insurance. However, the same or similar pain points are in the compliance space. And we have seen that. And although that we paused because we saw a little bit of a pause in the compliance, as I mentioned in the last slide, we also, if you are a person that deals with compliance, imagine if your job was now 50% done for you. Oh, you've got your SOC coming up, or you've got your renewal for this, and BreachBit says, hey, we've on the technical side, on the cyber side, we've actually already validated that 50% of it's already good to go.
Yeah.
So now less
you don't have to worry about
easy,
it. Yeah,
easy
so
life.
it is, yeah.
Right. And that's because we can talk about what's the right thing to do, and oh yes, we should pay attention to training. What we believe is that we need to make sure people in each part of the business actually understand how it matters to them and their sort of day-to-day function.
Absolutely. All right, so this slide, we're back to the triangle.
Yeah, I think, and I think we touched on this, and so I don't think we need to maybe recap on it, but it was just an example. Since the last slide was just a bunch of bullets, I'm just reiterating, this is what I meant when I showed this earlier picture, is creating when we do true risk quantification, we can solve so many problems for each part of this.
Like a little ecosystem.
Exactly.
You got the business, the insurance, the service providers. And I don't know if I saw it. What about if I'm a compliance officer. One of the things I have to do is look at vendor, my outsourced services. And I mean, people ask us for this kind of information as well. We have to do the vendor questionnaire, fill out, this is, who the shareholders are. They're basically risk assessing us as a vendor.
That's right.
What about on the cybersecurity side? Obviously, you want to make sure that your vendors, especially if you're giving them some data, you want to make sure that they're secure. What would you recommend that a business be looking at?
Two things.
And we can't really say insurance because not everybody can afford it or get it right now.
Right, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I'd say two things. The first is related to compliance, in that there's going to be this compliance risk or more work with your compliance, because many compliance standards are now saying, oh, and now I have to go check my vendors, just as though maybe if you're receiving inquiries for that. So that is something to, it's just about managing compliance program and things like that. And then the second part is that with third-party risk, it turns out that when an attacker is looking at your company, sometimes they will look to a company adjacent, maybe data adjacent, as you might say. I am going to look for, if you depend on a certain accounting software and I want to hurt you, I might hijack maybe the accounting software, which now allows me to not only ransom the accounting software, but perhaps you as well.
Okay, that'd be the way in.
And we've seen that is a very popular way of third-party attack. And so anytime you have these data relationships or software dependencies, their risk is now your risk.
Okay. And what about when those, I like the use of the software provider. What if it's just a software as a service? You just kind of subscribe to it, you pay monthly. I mean, how do you go and assess their risk? I mean, really, you don't usually have an account manager. You don't have somebody you talk to. You plugged in your credit card details and off you go.
Right.
How do you assess that risk?
I think of anybody's vendor, I think of as sort of, they're one of three types.
Right.
They're going to be a vendor that maybe is very uninterested in talking to you about it. They want to keep an arm's distance. If you were to ask them about their security, they'd say, leave me alone. I've delivered your software. We all know of places like that.
Exactly.
Right.
I would never figure
We
it
all know.
out.
And hey, look, that's how they are. I understand their position. And then on the other extreme would be a company that is absolutely open kimono about it.
Right.
In fact, they may also want to know about yours. And so there's this reciprocal energy. And it turns out, remember how I said earlier, attackers hate it when defenders cooperate and collaborate. The most successful and secure companies in this nation, even though they are in competing industries, I won't name the industry, but in this industry, it's one that, is famous in New York, and they are the most cutthroat people in terms of being competitors. However, they also have the tightest collaboration, and they have contracts in place to make everybody feel safe, but they all come in and they share, hey, I was attacked yesterday with this attack. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go defend that.
Okay.
And I just say that to illustrate that you will find that some people don't ever want to talk about it. Some want to talk about it a lot, and they understand the value of that. So for example, a capability that we provide to our clients is for those that want to know their third-party risk. We allow them to look at their entire vendor chain.
Okay.
And if they're a company that doesn't want to help or share, we can still show them what the company looks like.
Oh, okay.
Just like if you're strolling down the street, I can tell you if the door of your front door is unlocked. I can see that from the street, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we can help people see that. And then what we help them do is make the human connection with that company and the relationship to say, hey, I'd like to know more. I'd like to know more. And then they say, oh, well, I'd like to know more too. And so think of it as if you always knew the risk of your vendors.
Right.
And because they are participating and they are essentially telling you their risk. They don't maybe tell you all the dangerous details,
Right.
but we do it in a way that's safe.
Okay. But you said there were 3 types of vendors.
And so I'd say,
and
I'd just say one would be in the middle.
Okay.
Okay. Some people are okay to share some data, but
Okay.
don't
Just
want to go.
realized we got about 7 minutes left, so we got to speak fast.
Yeah.
This is the insurance.
It's just an illustration to
Okay.
say, if you're an insurance company, you want to give insurance to the green companies.
Right.
And if you're applying for insurance, you should seek to be able to prove that you're green.
That you're green. Okay. Yeah. We kind of covered all that. All right. Cyber defenders.
I'll just hit some of these
Okay.
because we have actually hit a couple of these. What we've seen from the cyber defenders is that many of their architectures are getting very large and kind of out of hand. They're sprawling. However, a lot of companies are increasing their maturity. They're starting to think about it in terms of risk. So you see other people in the business being able to contribute. A lot of people are concerned with their third-party risk. We see a lot of improvement in the anti-phishing tools and the multi-factor authentication. The ease of deploying multi-factor authentication has never been easier and cheaper to deploy in your company.
Right.
Same with anti-phishing tools. Okay, if your email system in some way, there's some way that can help, even, how you were particularly adept at finding that issue where somebody took over an email.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of tools out there that can actually help you not do something silly or stupid.
Okay. So if I was a compliance officer, compliance management,
Right.
didn't know cyber, where would be the first thing I start asking? I leave this webinar, I go, would it be like the anti-phishing and would I want to go and say, tell me more about our MFA?
For compliance?
Yeah.
And is that because you are a compliance officer trying to just go through your
Just go
checklist?
through my checklist.
I think that I would check for, does your compliance standard require you to check up on your vendors?
Mm-hmm.
Do your vendors or other relationships
Most
require
of
them to
make
check
it.
up on you? And knowing that the compliance standards are going to continue to evolve, and you're going to see requirements for multi-factor authentication if your standard doesn't already require it.
Okay.
And perhaps some of the other things that have been developed over the last 5 years.
Okay.
So keep up with what are those changing expectations going to be.
All right. And where would they do something like that? To, stay on top of that kind of stuff.
In my experience, though I can't speak for everyone, most compliance standards have some sort of a community of interest that you can be a part of.
Okay. So you like your compliance associations, risk management associations.
I think that's the place to go.
Okay. All right. See there. I do not know why that slide's there.
Looks like we've looped back to the front.
Yeah. Sorry. Hold on. I must have pushed a button. There we go. We were right there.
We can skip this. We've kind of talked about
We
it.
kind of talked about the,
Yeah, just
okay. And the forecast, the future.
right. So it's always dangerous to make predictions, but from where I sit, here's what I think you're going to see in the next 1 to 3 years. Attackers are already using some automation, but you are going to see a whole lot of that. What that means is they are getting much faster, much more deadly. So the threat is on the precipice of an extreme expansion. I mentioned about compliance that will probably also not only require, say, an annual pen test, but a periodic pen test. Think quarterly or continuous.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that coming as well.
We-
The almost continuous. I see that coming.
We talked about third-party scrutiny. So if you're not thinking third-party, you should. Adoption of ISO 27001 is 27001 tends to be a more international standard, but 27001 has to do with company security and things like that.
It's ISO.
ISO,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The ISO standard. ISO talks about more like the process of how the company does it and are they actually doing it well. And SOC is more of a a snapshot in time of are things working right now.
Yeah, but again, those can be very expensive.
Absolutely.
For the smaller firms. And in
Right.
3 to 6 years.
3 to 6 years. I see a possible inflection in the insurance space, an inflection in maybe in one or other way. In the good way, it could inflect because as insurance companies are very now concerned with understanding where's the risk, who are the good drivers, where's the floodplain.
Yep.
Where I see that happening is that can be good for everybody.
So this is very important for us to kind of start really managing it now. If you're not managing it well now, start managing it now, because in that 3 to 6 years, your insurance rates could drop.
If you're doing the right
if
things.
You're doing the right thing.
And if you're able to prove that over time you've been secure. However, the other alternate universe of inflection, as I mentioned how sophisticated attackers are being, is we are at this point where things could get better or they could get a lot worse.
Yeah.
So we need to keep an eye on the insurance space.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Foster, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So that's your email, foster@breachbits.com.
That's right.
For those of you who know me personally, I know him personally. He's in the office with me today. So reach out anytime. Feel free to check out the website, breachbits.com. Look at his, the services. Silo users, the cloud users are already monitored by your service.
Mm-hmm.
So we do like that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. It's helping them meet their regulatory
Excellent.
requirements as well. So
Excellent.
they get very excited. So again, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
So for our listeners, we do have some upcoming guests and topics. We're going to be talking with Elizabeth Lees in the Cayman Islands. We've got 2 different webinars with her team. One on the FATF, Mutual Evaluation Review changes for the 5th round. Also MLRO liability. That's very important for all of our compliance officers who are also MLROs to understand your liability risk. We've also have John Tobin. He's with the Homeland Security Investigations based in Honolulu. He's going to be talking about the Chinese black market foreign exchange. Now, he gave me some homework, and he's making me read this book, Willful Blindness. It's a hard read, I have to admit. I almost need a pen and paper to kind of get through it, but it's a very good book. I've also been reading Freezing Order by Bill Browder. It is about what happened in Russia, probably in the throughout the 90s. So also very, very good read too. So if you're looking for some reading recommendations, please take a look. So Sam Cooper, Willful Blindness, and Bill Browder's Freezing Order. And for just a quick update for our Silo users, you've been looking at this screen for the past 7 years. You probably haven't seen our system yet. This is our user interface that's currently in place. But we're finishing up the platform update. So we're getting the brighter colors, much nicer screen there. So you'll be expecting, the cloud users will get this first, so you'll see that soon. And then also, we will also soon be releasing what I call the CDD portal, so that you can just kind of send a link to your customers to onboard directly into your Silo system. We just did a symposium in Cayman last week, and I was able to give them an in-person update. Anyway, that's it. Again, Excuse me. Thank you for joining us. We're bang on the hour. We did good.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. We did good. So I've given them your email here as well, Foster at Breach Bits, if you want to learn more about Breach Bits and their services. Silo users, if you need to reach out to Wes, that's his email about the cybersecurity pen testing information on your particular Silo instance. And again, this is only for their cloud users, not for our on-prems. For anybody who wants to learn more about Silo, reach out to Tom Gardner. And if you are interested in being a guest or looking at sponsorship opportunities for AML grant matters, please reach out to me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kimberly.
All right, it's great to have you back. Okay.
See you next time.
Anti-money laundering compliance and customer and vendor onboarding involves multiple processes that must be done correctly and by the right people in the most efficient way. The tasks include gathering customer and vendor ID and verification documents, screening against sanctions and politically exposed persons lists, analyzing any reputational risk, periodic monitoring to assess any changes and updating due diligence, and staff training on money laundering, terrorist financing, bribery and corruption awareness and risks, as well as keeping them up to date on your policies and procedures and new regulatory requirements. In addition to the onboarding processes being strictly followed and documented, management must have access to critical compliance metrics and information to steer the company through regulatory waters and mitigate customer and other risks. With Silo Compliance System, these obligations become much more efficient. With Silo, your staff can enter the customer's information and upload due diligence documents and any other documents that you require. Key information entered about your customer automatically calculates a risk score, a calculation using a risk-based approach determined by you at initial implementation of Silo. In addition, if you have screening enabled, when the customer's name is first entered into Silo, the name is checked against sanctions, politically exposed persons lists, and adverse media. You'll see results of screening immediately and can review any potential hits right away. And with screening enabled, your customers and vendors are continuously monitored for any sanctions advisories, helping you get ahead of any potential reputational risks. No company is too small to benefit from using Silo. Even if your onboarding processes seem under control today, if one key staff member becomes unavailable or there is any increase in your customer portfolio, compliance with strict onboarding and review processes can quickly overwhelm a small company and put you at risk. Plus, implementing Silo can reduce the need to hire additional staff to manage compliance obligations and reduce your risk of non-compliance regulatory penalties and continued inspections. No one goes through an inspection or audit with great ease, but several users have reported that their inspections went more smoothly and with Silo they had improved outcomes. Reach out to us today to schedule a demo of Silo.